Well, let me tell you, he's not a slave to the teleprompter. He's the type of guy that speaks out. Sometimes his words are twisted. I'm not going to get involved in his case, but at least he has the guts to speak out and back up what he says. He may want to change here and there, but we need a guy that is brave, that doesn't fall into these politics or the media.
America's toughest sheriff, Joe Arpaio of Maricopa County, Arizona, yesterday on Fox News, talking about Donald Trump. He didn't want to comment specifically on Trump's case concerning Trump University, but you heard him say he thinks that Donald has guts for calling it the way he sees it. Now, Sheriff Arpaio is in a legal battle of his own against the ACLU suing him for allegedly racially profiling illegal aliens. The presiding judge, G. Murray Snow, has also been accused of demonstrating bias. In fact, in the latest article by former federal prosecutor Larry Klayman, Larry outlines why he believes Judge Snow is out to destroy Sheriff Joe. For more on this, we're joined via Skype from Los Angeles by the aforementioned Larry Klayman, the founder of Freedom Watch. As we mentioned, he's a former federal prosecutor. He's currently representing a client who has been involved in Joe Arpaio's current case. Larry, it's good to have you here tonight on Newsmax Prime, and you're a guy who calls it as you see it. You're calling Judge Snow Il Duce, bringing to mind Mussolini. What is it about Judge Murray Snow that reminds you of Benito Mussolini?
Jay, great to talk to you, and great to catch up, because this is a very important issue. And of course, Donald Trump raised the issue of judges' impartiality with regard to this Judge Curiel in San Diego. But this Judge Snow is probably the worst example of judicial misconduct I've ever seen in my 40-year career. The judge has been presiding over a contempt trial of Sheriff Arpaio. The allegation is that the sheriff violated his court order not to profile illegal aliens, of all places, at day worker sites. I mean, where are you going to find illegal aliens but day worker sites generally? But that being said, he went off the reservation. And I'm not talking about an Indian reservation in Arizona. He went off the court's agenda here and started to investigate allegations that were brought up by this rag called the Phoenix New Times. You probably know of it, being the congressman from Arizona, from that area, that smeared Arpaio and smeared my client, Dennis Montgomery. Dennis Montgomery is an NSA, CIA whistleblower. He has received immunity from the Justice Department through the FBI. I've been working with Director Comey's office directly through the General Counsel. And he has information about how the government has been illegally surveying not just telephone calls, but getting financial and other records of prominent people, including the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court justices, prominent businessmen, and others. And he was working with Arpaio because there are people in Arizona that have been affected by this. And through false allegations, he was dragged into this case. And allegations were made that Dennis Montgomery was a fraud, and Arpaio was working with him to investigate the judge. Well, he wasn't investigating the judge, but even if he was, there's nothing wrong with that as long as you don't do it coercively. It's fine.
And on the subject of Judge Snow, you write in your latest article that the wife of Judge Snow was apparently heard by witnesses saying her husband could destroy Sheriff Joe. And so that's out there now as part of the public record, and yet there's Judge Snow still on the bench. Is there a way to make a change there on the bench, Larry?
Yes, I'm glad you broke in. That's what I was getting to, is that Montgomery was dragged into this case, but we weren't allowed to intervene to defend himself. And we took an appeal to the Ninth Circuit, which is hearing this case expeditiously. It's being set down for oral argument. And we've moved to disqualify this judge because not only has his wife claimed that it's not in any way controverted or refuted, that the sheriff is out to destroy, the judge is out to destroy the sheriff and to deny him re-election and to destroy his life. And that has been corroborated through independent witnesses. But Judge Snow has also ordered the payment from Maricopa County of millions of dollars of legal fees to a law firm in which his brother-in-law is a partner, Covington and Burling. And not coincidentally, who are partners in that law firm? Former Attorney General Eric Holder, under President Obama, and Lanny Brewer, former head of the criminal division of the Justice Department. This is a calculated conspiracy to destroy the greatest sheriff in this country, is my client, in another case before the Supreme Court on the illegal amnesty executive orders of Obama. But they were out to destroy him because he's anti-illegal immigrant. There's an agenda in the Phoenix area to allow illegal immigrants to flood the state. And this is an outrage. This judge is guilty of, I think, the most egregious misconduct I have ever seen in my 40 years as a trial lawyer. And I'm confident that the Ninth Circuit's going to reach this issue and basically tell him he's disqualified. And if that happens, all these orders against Arpaio, and the judge has threatened Arpaio with criminal prosecution and also my client, all these orders will be vacated.
And you know, Larry, if this weren't so serious, you could call it a Snow job from this judge, but this is deadly serious because you're dealing with the rule of law and the reputation of a public servant. Let's go to the phones at 1-877-Newsmax to Staten Island, New York. Anthony is on the line. And Anthony, I know you've got something on your mind about somebody else who has found herself in legal hot water.
Well, I have to say something about this Arpaio, this cop. He's an American hero because he comes out and he stands up for America. And I think that people should reach out and try to help him out with his legal fees. And this government, it's terrible what they're doing. They go after everybody. Everybody that's a conservative, that stands up for America. If you're for the Constitution, they want to put you in jail. We have to stop it. The people have to see. They have more people. I go out every day and I tell people watch Newsmax TV because people, they're watching the regular news. They're watching other news. I don't want to mention the names because maybe I'm not supposed to, but
that's okay. You mentioned the right one. You mentioned the right one, Anthony. Newsmax TV, we're glad you're here. And I'll tell you firsthand, Sheriff Joe, when a whole lot of conservatives looked the other way when I mounted a political challenge, Sheriff Joe was in my corner. And Larry, the irony of this, all that Sheriff Joe has done is try to enforce existing law concerning immigration. And for that, he's getting smacked around by the courts.
That's right. And we know that, half of the babies born, for instance, in Arizona are illegal immigrants. We know that individuals that the sheriff has locked up that have been illegal immigrants, when he turns them over to ICE, the Immigration Service, the Department of Homeland Security, 65% wind up in his jails. This is costing Arizona a heck of a lot of money, JD. You know that. And he is standing there for the people of Arizona and the people of the United States. And here you have this judge, G. Murray Snow, that wants to make a name for himself, that stands behind the bench, doesn't even sit down, like Il Duce, like he had at Piazza del Popolo before Mussolini declared war on the Allies, and starts dictating. And I'll tell you what's really pathetic here is that Sheriff Arpaio's lawyers have rolled over to this judge because they're scared of him, because they're going to have future cases in front of him, or they have current cases. And the sheriff has had very poor legal representation. And now he's in hot water. And his only hope is the Ninth Circuit's going to disqualify this judge. And his lawyers haven't even challenged this judge in any meaningful way in front of the Ninth Circuit. I had to do it for Dennis Montgomery. And if you want to see more about it, they can, look on our website at freedomwatchusa.org. But it's an absolute disgrace that the sheriff doesn't have adequate legal representation here.
Well, we are certainly getting a representation of opinion from across the country. Back to the phones at 1-877-Newsmax. Again, out to Phoenix. And Roger is on the line. Hi, Roger.
Hi, Mr. Hayworth. How are you doing today?
Fine, sir.
Good. I used to work for the state capitol in security, and I've been in Arizona for, 53 years. And I just want to say Joe Arpaio is doing the best job that ever has been done by any sheriff in this state. And I'd also like to say I believe he is getting a Snow job from Judge Snow. And the other situation is that Donald Trump saying something about that judge being biased, that's very true. Every Hispanic that I know in my lifetime is Hispanic or Mexican first and American second.
Wow. Well, Roger, we appreciate your point of view. I take polite exception with your last observation. You're entitled to your opinion, but I'll tell you, I know a lot of folks of Hispanic descent who immigrated here legally, and of course they played a big role in my campaign standing up for border security. But Larry, we've got about a minute left, and I want to show people, to let them get a taste of what goes on when Sheriff Joe tries to enforce the law. From 4 years ago, a confrontation with a guy trying to claim Joe's a bigot. Here's the way it went down.
My sister was pulled over by your deputies and asked for her green card in Phoenix.
Oh, my deputy?
Your deputies who pulled her over
Must have been
and asked her
yours,
for her green card. No, she was just driving and she was Hispanic.
No, that's your...
No, that's your racist implementation
I'm
of the
not
law.
going to go argue with you.
You don't argue. I don't argue with imbeciles.
I'm not going to argue with you. That's your problem.
You sound like Hitler. You sound like Hitler.
All right, I see that, and I just got to tell you, Larry, you know, professional protesters come in. I think that guy was spinning a story, but he wanted to call Sheriff Joe Hitler. You get the last word, 15 seconds.
Well, you know what? I've known the sheriff for a long time. He's my friend. He's my client. I've never heard him make any racist remark about Latinos, not at all. And to make that kind of a statement, that's typical of the racial politics that's being played today, particularly by President Obama and his henchmen like Attorney General Loretta Lynch.
Larry Klayman, we're up against